Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, so here we are at the very top of 99A. Continuing to discuss the Mishnah's cases of children that get switched at birth, or it's unknown who belongs to it. Tell me about it, Rabbi's time. Yesh choletz l'imo misafek. You can have a case where a person can actually do chalitza with his mother, which is obviously a ridiculous situation, right? Because a person there's no yibum situation that applies to one's mother, but the Gemara will now come up with a fanciful case where this could happen. Lachosa misafek, same person who has to do chalitza with his sister. If you remember yesterday's cases, you can see where this is going. Levito misafek, or you could do chalitza to your daughter because of a doubt. Ketza, how does that work? Let's say your mother and another woman have two sons, each have a son, and they they gave birth to two other sons. Each one gave birth to another son in some kind of a hiding place. And that's the case of where they got confused with each other. So you weren't in the hospital with a proper tagging system. You got these two babies, and next morning you wake up and you can't identify which one belongs to who. So one of the boys is your brother because she was born to your mother, and the other one is not your brother, but you don't know which is which. And now the son of the first woman and marries your mother, and the first son of the other woman marries. Wait a second. Okay, wait. The son of the woman, not your mother, marries the mother of which son? Okay, we'll refer to the notes for a second. Okay, so you've got one, each woman has a son who is her son, and a son that you don't know which is which, right? So now the definite sons marry the opposite woman. Okay, so the son of woman A marries woman B, the son of woman B marries woman A. But now you can see where we're going here with the mixed up brothers. They don't know which of the mothers is theirs, which of the wives is theirs. And now, of course, everybody's got to die. So the Mesu blow on him. They both of the husbands die. So because the mixed up sons don't know which one is their mother, they have to do chalitza to both of them, and one of them is their mother, but we don't know which one. That's how you can have to do chalitza on your mother. Now, and what's the case where you have to do chalitza on your sister? Now you have your mother and another woman have two daughters that get mixed up. Okay, so the daughters, we don't know which is your sister, right? One of them is your mother's child, and the other is not your mother's child. So one of them is your sister, the other is not. And now we have to construct the marriage case. Now two brothers from a different family come, one marries each one, right? Brothers from a different mother. So your paternal brothers, right? But they're not your mother's brothers. If they were your mother's brothers, they wouldn't be allowed to marry in the first place because one of them is a sister, right? But your paternal brothers marry these two women, one of whom is your sister. And then they die. Then you have to do chalitza on both of them because one is your sister. That's how you can do chalitza on your sister. Levito misafik. So it does work out that you can do chalitza to your daughter. So now it's your wife and another woman who have two daughters, and they get mixed up. And the brothers of the two fathers come and marry the girls. The brothers of the fathers, the paternal uncles marry the girls, and then they die. So each of those fathers has ties to one of them and not the other, but we don't know which is which. So that's why you have to do chalitza to both of them. Okay. Tanya, you have a brisa. Hi, Rameir says, Ish v'isha pamim shemalidin chamesh umas. You can sometimes have a man and a wife that can have children that belong to 5 different classes of people. Okay, so how does that work? Yisrael shalakach eved v'shivcha min hashuk. A Jew who buys a slave, a male and female slaves. V'lahen shtei banim. Each of those already have 2 sons. One of those sons converted. Sorry, not each of them had 2 sons. They were together, and they had 2 sons together, and one of them converts. So one of the sons is now a convert because he converted, and the other is considered a non-Jew because he's a child of non-Jewish slaves. He'd be on l'shem avdus, and now the owner converts the slave couple, takes them to the mikvah to convert them to, now they're not non-Jews, they're now your slaves, right? So the children were born before you acquired them. Now you acquire them. One of the sons converts. Okay, so he's a regular ger, and now you've acquired this slave couple, and you take them to the mikvah to. That's part of what you're supposed to do, right? To acquire them into your household. And then then they have another child. So now that couple has a convert. They have a non-Jewish child born before this acquisition, and they have the child that's born after they've become after they've gone to the mikvah and become a Jewish owner's slave. Then the next son is an Eved, is also a slave. So we've got 3 so far, 3 types of children that this couple have. Now, now if you free the female slave, and now she has another child with the male slave who he hasn't been freed. So now we have a mamzer because why is that child a mamzer? We'll see in a minute, but this is following a view that the child of a regular Jew, because she's been freed, right, and a slave is a mamzer. Now shichar shneim, and now if you free the male slave, and then they marry, then that's completely kosher. Now the freed slaves are fully Jewish. If they have another child, then he's a regular Jewish child. So you have 5 categories of children from the same couple. My Kamashwan, why are you constructing this case and telling us? To tell us that to tell us about the mamzer case, that guess what? A slave who has a child with a regular Jewish person, because freed slave woman is now a regular Jew, that's considered a mamzer. That's what it's telling us here, according to that view. That's not a universally held view. Rabbanan, one more case. You can have a case where a person sells his father into slavery so that his mother can collect the ketubah. Okay, so how does it work? You buy a male and female slave on the slave market, and they already have a son. Then you free the woman. and you, the owner, marry her. V'yama v'kasav kol chasav livna. And then, oh, sorry, 1 second. So, yeah, right. And then you deed all of your property to her son from before. Now the husband dies, and the woman wants to get the ksuba. Nimsa, so how do you get the ksuba? Zemocher is aviv lahagbos leimo ksubasa. If the son doesn't have the money to pay the ksuba, then you sell your slave. The son sells the slave, who is his father, in order to get the money to pay the ksuba to his mother. My commercial. Why are we constructing this case? Kula Rameir here. We're telling you the opinion of Rav Meir, and he holds that a slave is not a. The question is a slave considered real property, real estate, or movable property? And the difference is movable property you have to sell in order to pay out your debts, right? And particularly the ksuba, but real property, real estate, and the dispute is whether a slave is considered real estate for this purpose. You would not have to sell. So movable property is, you have to sell to pay up your ksuba, but not real property. So this tells us that Rameir holds that slaves are considered not real property, but movable property. Or you could say, why did we construct this case? Hakamashmalan, avda kimakarkadame, that a slave is like real property. And then you could collect the slave himself, right? So in other words, you don't have to sell land to pay the ksuba, but the person to collect the ksuba could put in a claim to the land itself. And here, by analogy, the woman could put in a claim to the slave himself, and that's how and then sell him afterwards. So okay, so those were some fun cases, but we're not done. Next Mishnah. Haisha shenisari v'lada b'vlad kalasa. We're continuing with the cases. So until now, we've dealt with children who get mixed up with unrelated mothers. Okay, now, of course, we're going to go further into the jungle. So if a woman and her daughter-in-law each have a child and they get mixed up with each other, so one of the children is the woman's child, and the other is her grandchild. Higdilu hataros, and then they grow up. Avanasu nashim, each one gets married to Mason, they both die. B'nei hakala choltzim v'lo miyami. Any one of the sons of the daughter-in-law, the other sons of the daughter-in-law, they do chalitza, but not yibum. Shehu safek eshes achiv, because each one of them is a possible wife of your brother. Because the child might be the child of the daughter of the daughter-in-law, who is also your mother, or could be the child of the older woman. So in which case you would have to do yibum. So they both have to do chalitza. So it might be your eshes achiv, your brother's wife, or it might be safek eshes achi aviv, or it could be your father's brother's wife. And b'nei azkena o chotzin lo miyamim. Now that applies to the surviving children of the daughter-in-law. What about the surviving children of the mother, of the mother-in-law? They can choose to do chalitza or yibum. Why? Shesafek eshes achiv eshes ben achiv. Because what's the two possible relationships are that she's the woman is the wife, the older woman is the wife of your brother or the wife of your nephew, right? And either of those is permissible. So there's no restriction there, so you could do Yibum. Mesu Aksherim, what if the children that you do know their lineage, right? Not the mixed up children. The mixed up children are now going to be the survivors. Okay, so the ones that we know who their mother is, they die with no children. Hataravos, what's the rule for the mixed up ones? Livnei haskena chaltzin blomiyabim. They have to do chalitza to the widows of the sons of the older woman, because that might be their brother's wife, or it might not be their brother's wife. So and if it's not your brother's wife, then it's your father's brother's wife. So livnei hakala, and what about the sons of the what about what about the widows of the daughter-in-law's sons? So what do the surviving mixed up brothers have to do? One of them can do chalitza and the other does yibum, because they're both eligible to marry those women, but we don't know which really belongs to which. So like our original case in yesterday's Mishnah, one does chalitza, freeing her from the suffix, from the doubt, and the other is either the correct person to do yibum, or he's not, but chalitza has been done already. So they can each marry one if they both do chalitza and yibum, like we had yesterday. What if the mixed up children were one mother is a daughter of a Kohen, the wife of a Kohen, so she has a child, and she has a slave who also has a child, and the two get mixed up. So now the question is, in either case, they can eat truma, right? Because they're both members of the Kohen's household. One is his daughter, and the other is his slave's daughter. So any member of the household is permitted to eat truma. So even though we don't know which is which, but either way, they can eat truma. And then they also get a portion of truma from the granary. We'll see tomorrow. We'll talk about that a little bit. And they're both prohibited to become tame, just like a kohen. And they can't get married. They can't marry someone who is eligible to marry a Jew, because one of them is a slave, and they can't marry someone who is ineligible to marry a Jew because one of them is Jewish. Now they grow up, and they freed each other, right? Like, they make a deal, like, I'm going to free you in case you're the slave, you'll free me in case I'm the slave. So then, one way or another, they're freed. Then they're completely, they are regular, each one is considered a regular Kohen, and can marry only those who are eligible to marry a Kohen. And they can't become Tameh, just like a Kohen. And if they become Tameh, they don't get punished. So if you intentionally, as a Kohen, make yourself Tameh, then you get lashes. But here, we're not sure, are you the Kohen or is the other one the Kohen? So we don't give you lashes. Sorry, I did that already. And they cannot eat truma because one of them is no longer a Kohen, is no longer the member of a Kohen's household. But again, the punishment is if you eat truma that you're not entitled to, then you have to pay back with a 20% penalty. So you don't have to pay the penalty because we don't know if you're the Kohen or the not Kohen. They don't and they don't get the portion of truma from the granary. They can sell truma and keep the money. They don't get the sacrificial meats from the temple, again, because one of them is a Kohen, one is not. We don't know which. and you don't let them eat sacrificial. This seems to be, oh yeah, this isn't sacrificial stuff, but this is like the Bechor, for example, the firstborn that goes to the Kohen. They don't get that because one of them is not a Kohen. Vein motzin shalahen miyadan, but if they do have, let's say you're a Kohen and you have a Bechor, you don't have to give it up, right? It's yours. You're a Kohen. In this case, we can't prove which is the Kohen. So if each of them has a Bechor and born to their flock, then they get to keep it because we have no way to prove that we can expropriate it from them because, for not being a Kohen, because one of them is a Kohen. They, again, when this is one of the matnos kahuna, one of the things you're supposed to give to the Kohen when you slaughter an animal is to give the Kohen a portion. So if one of these doubtful Kohanim slaughter an animal, they don't have to give away the Kohen gifts because they may be a Kohen and we can't extract it from them without proof. And now, what about, like, can you bring the Bechor as a sacrifice? No, because might be a proper Bechor, might be an improper, or might not be a Bechor. So there's a doubt here. So you just, as we do with all doubts of sacrifices, you just let it. You can't bring it to the temple. You just let it die. V'nosnin olav chumrei kohanim chumrei Yisraelim. Generally, anything that any stricture that applies to a Kohen will apply to you, and anything that applies to a regular Jew will also apply to you. Okay, now Gemara will analyze this a bit. Let's see. Okay. Mesu haksherim. We said if the sons, the case where the sons who were, like, we know who their mothers are, if they died, and so then we analyze what do the doubtful sons do. Elahanach mishum di yaruv lehu havalu psulim. Like, Gemara is questioning the term, like, why do you call the ones who we know about, we call them ksherim? They're kosher people, right? The other ones are not unkosher people, right? They're not psulim. One of them is this one's daughter, one is the other son, and the other is the other one's son. But there's nothing like, there's no stigma about them. Our Papa says, Emo Mesu Avadain. Okay, read the Mishnah as not the ksherim, but the vadaim, the certain ones, the one that we know who they are. Okay, livnei hakala echad chaleks. Now, with the widows of the daughter-in-law, the widows of the sons of the daughter-in-law. So we said one does chalitza, one does yibum, like yesterday's Mishnah. So dafka michlas v'hadar yibumi. Like we said yesterday, first you have to do the chalitza because that releases, if you both do chalitza, that releases whichever one releases them to marry the other. If they're not marrying the actual brother-in-law. You can't do it the other way around. Because then you would be, if you marry the Yevamot before the chalitza is done, then if you're marrying the wrong one, then she is actually tied to the other guy, and you're marrying her improperly. Now, the last case in the Mishnah was Kohenes Shnisari. If you have a Kohen's wife has a child, and her slave has a child, and they get mixed up. So one of the things we said that we didn't explain before, and we said the Gemara will explain it, here it comes, that they each get one portion of truma at the granary. Of course, they have to split one. Only one of them is a Kohen, so they can't take two portions. They have to take one portion and split it. So where it says Ema chelek ke'achad, it means that they get one. That's what it means. It means it's just going to change the language so it's more clear. Chelek ke'achad, they get a portion of one person, like the equivalent to one person's portion that they have to split. It's non-kamandi amar. And their Mishnah accords with the following opinion: Ein chalkin truma l'eved elim kain rabo imo. That you can only give truma to a slave of a Kohen if the Kohen is there with him, right? It's like, in our community pool, we have guest passes, but you can't just send your guests with a pass. You have to be there to let them in. The Tanya, And what's the source for that? There's a brisa that says exactly that. Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Yachol Sheyomer, Im Kohen Ani Tnuli B'Shvil Atzmi, V'Im Eved Kohen Ani Tnuli B'Shvil Rabbi. Rabbi Yossi says no. This one of them can go without the other and say, you know what? Either I'm coming as the actual son of a Kohen, an actual Kohen, or I'm coming as the son of the slave of the Kohen. Either way, I'm entitled, right? So, hand it over. I don't need the other guy with me. And Bimkom Rabbi Yehuda, in the place where Rabbi Yehuda lived, Hayumalin Mitruma Liyos, they would say, a person who's entitled to collect truma is a person who is entitled to marry whoever. He's like he's got proper genealogy. But in Rabbi Yossi's, because so in other words, in Rabbi Yehuda's place, because both of them had to come to claim their portion, so it was clear that if they had come as one person, if only one of them had come, they wouldn't have been allowed to take truma, and so similarly, they're not genealogically kosher for everybody. But in the place where Rabbi Yossi lived, where he said, you could come alone and collect truma based on the validity of one or the other of your claims, even though you don't know which is true. So therefore, the fact that we gave you truma by yourself does not entitle you to get your genealogical certification, because it's still possible that you're the son of the Eved. So we're not going to. So the fact that we let you collect truma because you're either the son of the Eved or the son of the Kohen doesn't mean that we're going to allow you to marry whoever you want, because you still might be the son of the Eved, of the slave. Tanya Rav Brisa. Amar Blazer Bar Tzadok. Blazer said, "Yama lo he'adati ela edus echad." I never testified about a person's genealogical status except for one time. And because of my testimony, they took somebody who had been considered a slave and they made him a Kohen. They certified that he was a Kohen. So you can change somebody's status. They took somebody who was a slave and they made him a Kohen. That would make sense. Like, if you're saying that you took a person who was actually a slave and made him into a Kohen, then that would be wrong, right? That can't happen, right? So if the saying is that God doesn't even allow the animals of righteous people to transgress, like to eat from somebody else's field or something. So tzaddik, takola yodon tzaddikim atzmon lo kol shekei. So how could God allow that your testimony allowed an actual Eved to be considered an actual Kohen? That can't be. Because of my testimony, they wanted to change an Eved to a Kohen, and my testimony prevented that from happening. Chazav Yasri to Rabbi Yossi. What was the case? He saw in the place of Rabbi Yossi of Azal v'Asid, he saw this, the slave of the Kohen went to the granary and collected, as according to Rabbi Yossi, he's allowed to do, collected truma, Ba'azal v'Asid, and then Ba'asrei to Rabbi Yehuda. And then Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok went to the town of Rabbi Yehuda and testified about this person that he collected truma on his own in Rabbi Yehuda's place. That would be an indication that he's a valid Kohen, right? So that was the. So they were going to say, "Oh, you must be a Kohen," until Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok says, "No, wait, that happened in the town of Rabbi Yossi, and that's why they allowed him, but not because he's an actual Kohen." Okay, Tana Rabbanan, rabbis taught Asara and Chalking Lahem Truma B'Beis HaGranos. There are 10 kinds of people that we don't give Truma to at the granary, even though they may be entitled. Velohim, Cheresh, a person who is a deaf mute. Just a second. Okay, so Chereshoto Akata, a deaf mute or somebody who is developmentally disabled or intellectually disabled, Vakatan or a minor. So that's because it's kind of degrading to the truma, like they don't know how to take proper care of truma is the assumption. Tumtum vandroganus, someone who's of indeterminate or both sexes, because it's unclear if they are if that person is a valid Kohen. Eved, a slave, as we've seen, slave of a Kohen. That is, now, as we saw, in some places they would allow him, but in other places not, to collect by himself. Aisha, a woman. Reason there for the woman. Yeah, the wife of a Kohen. Cannot collect. Why not? I don't remember why the wife can't collect. Is you were going to say why? Okay, maybe we'll come back to that. It might be further on in the Gemara. I don't know if I saw why that is. Let's bookmark that for a minute. RL, someone who's uncircumcised, a Kohen who's uncircumcised is not allowed to eat truma. But Tameh is a Kohen who is Tameh because you're not allowed to make truma Tameh. So if he touches it, it becomes Tameh. The Kohen who marries a woman that he's not permitted to, so he's no longer allowed to eat truma. But we can send truma to their homes, except for the Tameh and the Kohen who marries out, as it were. So he's no longer entitled to eat truma. And all these other people are entitled to eat truma. They just can't collect it at the granary. So now we'll look at each case. So the category of the deaf mute, the intellectually disabled, or the minor, they're not, we don't trust them with the truma, basically. It's degrading to the truma to hand it over to them. Also the indeterminate sex people, they're neither male nor female. So they're not, so they're entitled to eat truma if they're the members of the household of a Kohen. But again, it's considered undignified somehow. This wouldn't really wash today. Eved Nami, and the slave, because as we saw in our earlier discussion, you might think, oh, this guy is entitled to collect truma. He must be a Kohen, but he's not. He's the slave of a Kohen. RL Vitame, what about a person who's a Kohen who's uncircumcised or Tame? We shouldn't do Mise because these people are considered like repulsive. Okay. So, and of course, the Tame has another factor, which is why you can't even send him the truma to his house because he'll make a Tame. No seisha shein slow, and a Kohen who marries out, mishum knasa. That's a penalty for, because he violated the law, the rules for a Kohen who he can marry. We don't let him eat truma. Isha might tell, oh yeah, here the Gemara asks, why not a woman? Like, what's wrong with the wife of a Kohen who's entitled to truma? There's nothing wrong with her. Why can't she collect at the granary? There's an argument about it. One says because we're concerned that one day they'll get divorced. We've always been giving this woman her truma, and now she's divorced, so she keeps coming to the granary to collect, and she's not eligible anymore. That's why we don't give women truma at the granary, because their eligibility can be revoked. The other opinion is mishum yichud, because you don't want women, going into the storehouse in the granary with the guy who's distributing, and being alone with a man who's not his wife. Now, what's the practical difference? What about if you have a granary that's close to the city, but there aren't a lot of people there? So if you're concerned about them being secluded, this is a busy place. It's near the city, so there may not be anybody there now, but they're not going to get into any monkey business because somebody could come in at any time, as opposed to a granary out in the field where you can look for miles around and see if anybody's coming. Another practical difference, the mirchak ushchiche ba'inche, or a distant granary way out in the fields, but there's a lot of traffic there because there's a lot of activity at the time that they're distributing the flour from the granary. Okay, all right, we'll stop here for today. That was kind of fun.
I'll see you. Have a good day, Dov.
Bye.